Welcome back to Lower Keys Living, everybody. Hope everybody had a wonderful week. This evening, we are on our way back in from a late afternoon fishing trip out for mahi and tuna, stopped at the reef for some yellowtail snapper, and just had a nice evening on the water. One of the things I love is that I've got pretty good peace of mind because I keep my boat in tip-top shape. There's a list of things I do every time I run the boat, like flushing the engines out with fresh water every time. But tonight I'm going to focus on things that I do every month, once a month, just going through the systems, cleaning components off, just to top to bottom, keeping an eye on everything so I can head off any major problems so we don't end up ruining a night like this. As I mentioned, I do flush the engines after every trip, whether I'm out for half an hour or 5 hours. They get thoroughly flushed with fresh water. But you'll see on the list here that I put up in a moment the things I do on a monthly basis. Nothing would ruin a beautiful evening like this out on the water than getting stuck out with a breakdown and having to call Towboat USA or one of the other services to tow you back in after a nice evening of fishing. Not to mention it's going to keep you off the water getting your boat repaired. So with that, I'm going to throw up a list of things that I do once a month, just inspecting my components top to bottom on the boat. Really quick, short summary what I do, give you an idea what it looks like. So greasing the engine quick connects, salt away engine flush, inspect all the engine hoses and fittings, Corrosion X the metal components. Right on down the list here, you'll see that, but everything from testing all my switches, making sure they're working, inspecting wiring. So I'm going to show you that here in just a moment. So I always start with, once a month, I do a really big engine flush with salt away, get any salt that might be building up or that my freshwater rinses that I do after every trip misses. So that salt away the engines. Next thing I do, get the engine covers off, and I go through all of the fittings, all the rubber fittings, all the metal fittings, and really clean the engine off and give it a good inspection to see if any hoses are starting to corrode. If there's any leaks in the engine, it gives me a chance to spot things, head things off before running into a major problem on the water. These engines are almost 20 years old, and you can see everything looks almost brand new on these. And again, it's this monthly cleaning, monthly inspection. But most of these hoses, everything are all original components on these engines, but just staying on top of it, keeping it clean, makes it easier to work on, and it makes it easier to spot if you're starting to have a problem. The other thing I do is I spray down all the metal components, especially in the lower unit where we get some salt water up in there. Just spray everything down, wipe it down, coat everything with Corrosion X. I've been told I can spray all the electronics, everything with it, but I don't do that. Just mainly focus on the electronics. The other thing I do is I inspect my anchor rope. I've got a 100-foot dock here and 200 feet of rope, so I just run that up and down, rinse it off with fresh water, give it a going over, and then I hang it up on the fence just to dry for an hour before I put it back in the anchor locker. Again, just peace of mind knowing that anchor is going to work. Next thing I do, I check all my electronic switches and inspect all the electronics from the battery chargers, make sure the batteries are charging fully, inspect all the connections, make sure I'm not seeing any corrosion starting to build up. Again, keeping all the electronics in tip-top shape. And then other thing I do, inspect the bilge area and go through the fuel filters, make sure there's no water in those, check my two-stroke engine oil tanks, make sure they're looking good, and then I inspect all the pumps. I've got a macerator, freshwater pump, saltwater pump, and then I also really thoroughly inspect my through hole fittings to make sure they're in tip-top shape. Next, I wipe down all of my fabric surfaces, especially the ones that I can't take in, especially these bolsters, with a UV protectorant. I use 303, but a ton of products out there that work equally as well. But I give everything a good soaking and wipe it down to make sure it's in the fabric, and it keeps everything looking top-notch. Then I also make sure anything that's could be sun damaged, I cover up. Seats are covered, the glass windshield is covered, just prevents any pitting, discoloring, fading from being in the sun, because the sun down here eats everything alive. So that's pretty much what I do. Just real important, know your boat systems, get to know your boat, never neglect maintenance, and don't let a breakdown ruin a perfect sunset. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week on the water.